Welcome to You Can Call Me Goddess, because you're so much more than a queen. My name is Manouk Vink. I am a trained intuitive energy healer specialized in transforming your body and your life. In this podcast, we are going to be diving into everything to unlock the goddess that you are within you. Think of it as the ultimate glow up from the inside out. It's time to unlock your power. It's time to unlock your magic. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Call Me Goddess, the podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to dive into something very juicy. I'm super excited to get into this topic because it can explain a lot of why you may be feeling disconnected or why maybe you're struggling with some self-image issues and things like that. And we have touched upon it a little bit here and there, but today we're gonna dive a little bit deeper into that. And we're even gonna bring in a little bit also again about like what's happening in the body and why that could be happening, because it's all interlinked basically. So today we are going to talk about, I'm sorry, this mic keeps dropping and I want to just have it up here. So let me see, oh, there it goes again. Today, we are going to be talking about basically how like 95% of your thoughts are not even your own. And that is super interesting because that means a lot of the worries, the concerns, and the ideas and beliefs that you have about yourself aren't even your own. They're not thoughts that you have. You're picking up on other people's thoughts and belief systems, and you are basically internalizing them. And that is where a lot of gain can be made. Basically, like you can gain a lot from actually getting clear on what your thoughts are and what your beliefs are in comparison to other people's thoughts and belief systems. So we're going to dive into that and a little bit more because of all of this contamination, you are actually kind of distancing yourself from who you truly are at your core. And I'm sure a lot of us know that feeling, and we think that we've already disconnected from other people, other belief systems, beliefs that are put on us. But in reality, we are still so much more influenced by other people's ideas, the collective consciousness, and all of that than you actually think. And it's actually very difficult to disconnect from that. So as we spoke about before, let's just dive back in a little bit about what we spoke about before. Basically, as an intuitive, which we all have the ability to do, right? We all have this ability. You do it on a daily basis. I think you're just not aware when you're doing it, or you're not aware when you're picking up on thoughts. But as an intuitive, you can direct your intuition, or basically like your senses, to pick up on a specific energy frequency, or you can learn how the universe is communicating with you, how source is communicating with you, how your body's communicating with you, which we already spoke about, right? In many different ways. So you are doing, this is already happening, but when you're not training your intuition, you're not actually understanding what you're picking up on. And that is why I am now developing a new series inside the free membership where we dive into how to develop your intuition, what it actually is, and how you can start differentiating between what you're picking up on and how to start training that. And then if you want to go into more advanced programs, we are also doing that in the Goddess Academy. But that aside, I just want you, so if you want to know a little bit more about that, go dive into the new series. I will be uploading more next week on that series. But to get a basic understanding of how all of that works, and I think I touched upon it also in one of the podcasts, I will link it below, where like about intuition. But basically, so what happens, there are a lot of like energetic fields around us, and I'm sure you know that. You know, when you're picking up on someone's vibe or someone's energy, or even sound has a frequency and an energy, objects have an energy, everything has an energy, and all energy and all light carries information. And so when someone has a thought, that is also energy. And you may be picking up on the frequency of someone's thought, and you might be picking up on their belief systems, and you're not even knowing it. So someone could be thinking something, and you're picking up on what they are thinking, and you're internalizing it, and you're making it your own. So with all these thoughts and beliefs flying around, I'm sure you've noticed this before. I mean, I have for sure, where when you go to a different country, you feel a completely different energy, right? And a different vibe. And you feel like there's different belief systems. And that's because the collective consciousness of that area, or the consciousness of that area, is different. That frequency of that area is different. So you're picking up on different belief systems around you, different ideas around you, and things like that. It's the same when you're like surrounding yourself with a group of people. The more you surround yourself with that group of people, you're picking up on their energies, you're internalizing them, etc., etc., etc. So that is what's happening. And without you knowing it, 95% of your thoughts aren't even your own. So only 5% of what you are thinking are your thoughts, because we are picking up all these things from everywhere, all these energies, all these thoughts, all of these things from everywhere. Think about social media, right? Like there's so many beliefs and things going out everywhere, and you're slowly making it your own because you're linking it to what you're going through, and you're like, it's starting to become like, it's like subliminal messaging, right? The more you hear something, that's how a belief gets created. So the more you think about something and you connect proof to that thought, the more it starts like manifesting as a belief system that you have. So what we're going to rewind, and we're going to go in a different direction right now. And what I want you to think about, I don't know who's seen the movie Inside Out. It's absolutely amazing. And especially Inside Out 2, I loved it. I loved it so much. And it's actually so accurate with what is going on. So if you've watched that, then use that as a reference, right? From a young age, and I think we all know this. So between the ages of like 0 to 7, 0, wow. Can I not say the Z? Like, what the hell's going on with me? 0 to 7. I think it might be like, I've got like these, whatchamacallit, they're not braces, but like wires behind my teeth. And for some reason today, they're not cooperating with me. From 0 to about 7 years old, you're still developing. You're actually quite pure. You're still like, there's not many influences that are being taken on by you, right? You're not struggling with your identity yet when you're in that age. And that comes like right after you start like realizing who you are. And if you look at Inside Out, the first movie, you see that process, right? So you see that process where, you're still, there's only a few emotions that you're working with: happy, sad, fear, and disgust, right? Or something like that. Fear wasn't even part of it yet. Happy, sad, disgust, and anger. Those are the few emotions. And then as you develop, you start taking on more emotions, more beliefs, more things, because you start creating an identity for yourself. But you're actually disconnecting from your core self because you're taking on belief systems from others. So if you go to if you watch Inside Out 2, you see how the main character in that movie is kind of losing track of who she used to be. Oh, and Joy. Joy was happy. Yeah. So she's kind of losing track of who she used to be because of all the belief system, the ideas, and how people perceived her. So that started shifting like how she was behaving and who she was. So in that age bracket, those are the critical stages of what is going on. And I know we've all experienced that. So I'm going to tie it back in again to, if you listen to my podcast on body reflections and how your body is basically like communicating with you, and by developing and understanding the communication of your body, you can start figuring out where your limiting beliefs lie, what you need to focus on, what you need to shift to start changing your universe, your world around you. And shifting your self-image beliefs is literally at the core of you achieving everything that you desire. So when you start understanding how the body works, and listen to I will link them again, the podcast on opening the fountain of youth. So basically how your body aging is actually all body reflections. And then there's a bunch of other podcasts. I'm going to see if I can link them below to get you to understand body reflections. Also, dive into the mini-series in the Dream Body Activation mini-series in the free membership. There I explain it even more and more on how body reflections kind of work. So taking it back to being your core self. So when you're at a young age, right? When you're at that age between 0 to 7, you're still kind of developing. You're still kind of like your persona isn't being influenced as much yet. Who you are isn't being influenced by external factors. You are still very much developing. You're still very much more like closer to your core, I guess, not even fully yet, but that's a different story. We'll dive into that another day. But they're actually, if you look at reflections, the universe is always communicating to you. Even your partners and families and friends are always reflecting something to you, another topic as well. But between those ages, you're still reflecting your parents. After that, so basically everything that's happening to you is you trying to send a message to your parents and trying to communicate. You're like taking on, I don't know. Okay, different topic. We'll dive into that another day because that's going to get too confusing right now. But basically, till 7, you are not developing your identity yet, right? So you're still just a kid having fun. Like, you know, your soul is kind of settling into who you are. And yeah, so basically till 7, your soul is still kind of settling in who you are. Then after that, you start realizing that you have an identity and the ego starts playing a role. And that's what you really beautifully see with Inside Out 2. They show that very, very well. So what happens with puberty, right? You start getting acne, you start gaining weight, you start having all these body things happening to you. I mean, it is part of puberty, but it's also your body reflecting things to you. Why? Because you're starting to develop an identity. So for me, for example, I was, till about 9 years old, I was really skinny, like a really skinny girl. Then 10 hit, and I think I started developing and starting to become self-conscious of who I was, like getting like more of an ego, wanting to, being influenced by other people's belief systems and by other people's thoughts. So what happened? I started gaining weight. Why did I gain weight? If you listen back to the other podcast, because I wanted to protect myself from from me beating myself up, my own abuse, right? Because I started like beating myself up about certain things, because now at this age, at around 10, 11, 12, you start becoming self-aware. You start taking on other people's ideas and belief systems. You start realizing you need to amount to something when you grow up. You start realizing that you have to start working towards, your life and who you are and, getting the attention of guys or girls or making friends, and people start having opinions about you and things like that. And when you're younger than that, you're not as worried about those things. So even when it comes to acne, the emotional root cause of acne is not loving yourself. So not loving yourself, and then depending on how it's showing up and what's going on with you, it's in an area of life. So then acne starts showing up. So what happens at age 10, 11, 12, 13, 14? You start becoming extremely critical of yourself. You start becoming very hard on yourself. You start really struggling with who you are because you realize there is an identity to create. Right? There's an identity to create. There's someone you're meant to be. You start looking up. I remember a girl, for example, when I was 13, there was a girl in my class, and she, how old were we? 13, 14. And she was getting attention of guys. And I wanted to also get attention from guys because it's like a validation thing, right? Again, self-worth, self-image. And I didn't view myself as very beautiful. I was very much struggling with my self-image, with my fashion. I mean, we all know the fashion sense. I mean, I know the 2000s fashion sense, oh my goodness, what the hell was I wearing? I was really trying to have these bangs that would go over this, because everybody was wearing these skater outfits back then, but my hair was too wavy and too curly. It wouldn't work with me. So my hair was all frizzy. I mean, I was getting breakouts. My body was changing. I was struggling with my weight, everything. And so this one girl was getting all this attention from the guys. And I was like, okay, how are you getting all this attention from the guys? So we started talking, and she was like, you need to go buy a thong. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll go buy a thong. And she would wear thongs and mini skirts. I know, so crazy, right? 13, 14, to me, that's crazy. Years old doing this, because I was so much struggling with my identity, and I wanted this validation. And especially when you had a crush on someone in your class, right? And there was a school dance, and he started dating the older girls. And I was like, well, why not me, right? Why not me? So you start struggling with this identity. You start getting that mean girl situation happening in high school, middle school. All of that stuff starts happening. You try to you're literally taking on belief systems from others, right? And also you want to do a good job at school, or you don't care anywhere because it's cooler not to care. It's all of this stuff is happening, and you're starting to like literally create who you are, create an identity of who you are because you're so incredibly lost. At least I was around that age. I don't know about you, but I was like, incredibly lost around that age. So what starts happening? Your body, first of all, is communicating to you. Obviously, then you don't know what's going on. And hopefully we can get to a point where, teenagers start listening more to their intuition and understanding what their body's communicating. I mean, that would be a dream world. But for me, that was one of the hardest phases of my life, right? Because you're trying to understand your identity, understand everything. And at the same time, you're getting all these opinions, all these beliefs thrown at you. And can you imagine now, like back then, social media wasn't even that much of a thing. Now, social media is massive. So I can't even imagine how hard it must be now for teenagers with all this like access to the collective consciousness, to these belief systems, like on your phone constantly. You're constantly being bombarded with who you're meant to be, what you're meant to look like, what is cool, what is not. So can you see how in those moments, in those critical moments, when you're trying to form and create who you are or be who you are, right? In those critical stages, you're totally disconnecting from who you are at your core. You don't know who you are anymore. You don't know who you are anymore at that core because all of this influence from all sides is coming in. You're hearing other people's thoughts. You're internalizing them. At the same time, now you're getting to an age where you're starting to understand and internalize what your parents are going through, right? So belief systems of your parents may be struggling with body image. So I know I had that for sure. And this is not to put like any blame or fault on any parents because we're all freaking human. But at this stage, you start seeing how your parents are behaving. That's how I should be behaving. You're hearing these conversations of your parents. You're hearing their thoughts. You're hearing their beliefs about politics, the world, how life should be, about how they feel about their bodies. And you may be hearing their conversations, but you're also hearing their thoughts. You're hearing the news. You're hearing all of these impulses, all of this energy, all these beliefs, and you're making them your own. And you're morphing them into who you are, right? And now you have labeled yourself like, this is me. But actually, in actual fact, can you see how all of these belief systems and all of these things that you've internalized and that you've heard are not your own? You haven't had the chance to develop who you are or actually get in touch with who your core self, who your true self is. You don't know anymore because now it's all been clouded and molded by all of other people's belief systems. And that is something that we do inside the Goddess Academy with the programs and stuff. It is so important when you get closer to who you are, your core self, to what you want, to get you to who you're meant to be in this lifetime. Because we all came here, our souls all came here. And if you're listening to this, you're meant to hear this to fulfill our purpose. So that is, you can call it destiny. We call it soul pull, soul path. So basically what your path is in this life, what is your mission in this life? And the thing is, when you start following and walking that path, you will be the happiest person ever. And the best way to start walking that path and truly knowing that you're walking that path is when you connect to your core self. Because your core self actually, like, that is what you want to do at a core true self level. But because we've been covered by so many layers of influence and thoughts and belief systems, actually most of the time we aren't even connected with our core self anymore because we have interlinked so much with other people's belief systems and ideas. And you can't blame anyone. You can't blame yourself. It is honestly incredibly difficult to not be infected. It's almost like an infection. Affected by these things. It is almost impossible to not be affected by these things because it's constant. It is a constant stream of consciousness. It's a constant stream of energy going your way. And that is even just without social media, the TV, radio. I mean, not all of us listen to that much radio anymore. But when you're constantly consuming all of that and you're hearing it in the background, and you're basically like reprogramming your mind, and you're taking on these beliefs and you're programming your mind to think like everybody else. And even though you may feel like you don't think like everybody else, a lot of the beliefs that you've made your own aren't always even your own anymore. And it takes a lot of time to start stepping away from that, to start actually embodying who you truly are. And I know we get to that stage somewhere in life where we're like, wait, is this even anything that I want to do anymore? Like, is this path? And I'm sure if you're listening to this, you've probably had that before where you're like, do I even want to do this? Like, is this even something that I want to do? And funnily enough, even though I was still like back then very much under the influence, only recently I'm chipping away at all of this. Like, only recently am I learning to connect with my core self and actually see what my core self wants to do. And I'm on that journey still. So you can like I have my mentor who helps me also tap into all of that. And that is how, I don't know if you've listened. Did you listen? Did I say this in the previous podcast? I may have said it in the previous podcast, but I actually recently decided to do something completely out of my comfort zone, like a sport completely out of my comfort zone, because it has to do with what my core self wants to do and enjoy. So I'll let you all know how that goes. But basically, that is when you start tapping into your core self, you start discovering things that you would have never discovered about yourself because you're so influenced by other people's thoughts and belief systems. And what was I saying before this? I wanted to think of something else. But basically, it takes a lot of like, because it's so difficult. For example, if you think about the aging topic that we spoke about in one of the other podcasts, right? If you're constantly being told that by 30, your body's going to start like breaking down and you're going to start losing muscle and you're going to start like your bones are going to start cracking. I mean, I'm sure you've seen those posts about like fitness, right? Like how like at 30 now they put like a funny cracking noise in the background at 30 doing squats, like that's not normal. Like we're not supposed to be aging at that rate. But like I said, if you listen to the youth podcast, I will link it below. There I talk about how basically this is just belief systems that we are taking on from other people. And so what do we start doing? We start leaning into that belief system, and therefore you start having the same symptoms and reactions as everybody else because you start internalizing the fact that that's going to happen to you. You start becoming less flexible, and being less flexible is that's what's causing your joints to crack and hurt. It has to do with flexibility. So you're taking on these belief systems that you're supposed to be aging, that you're supposed to like start getting gray hairs, that you're supposed to start having wrinkles and all this stuff, when in actual fact, that's not necessary. It's not meant to happen. But because we're so disconnected from our bodies and we don't actually know what's going on, and we're so disconnected from our intuition, I don't know if we're disconnected from our intuition, but it's just not trained. So we don't know how to fully tap in and listen to it. And that is why that's such a game changer, because when you start tapping in, you start realizing what is true, what is right, who you are at your core, what you're meant to be doing here. And that makes such a big difference, because when you connect with your core, right, and who you are, life becomes more fun and it becomes easier because you're doing what your soul self wants you to do, what your true self wants you to do here. And it's so hard because we're in this society where, you know, we believe you have to work hard to earn money. You have to do is it 9 to 5 job. You need to go to university. You need to go to school. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to have babies by 30 latest. Otherwise, you know, your eggs are no good anymore, which also is just not true. You need to be married, have kids, like, or not. And now we're going into that other world where it's supposed to be like liberal and everybody's allowed to be whoever they want to be, but actually you're not, because if you disagree with that, then then you also don't count anymore. So we're literally just constantly being told who we're meant to be, so much so that we don't even know who we are anymore. Like in the previous podcast, we spoke about like the beauty standards of today, right? And if you think about the beauty standards of today, everybody's morphing into the same freaking human being. Like all women are starting to look exactly the same. Where is the beauty in that? And do you actually think that every girl that gets that done wants to, like, their core wants to be like that? No, it's all these contaminating thoughts and belief systems that get you to feel that way, that get you to think that that's how you feel about the situation, when in actual fact, you have just internalized other people's belief systems. So taking it back to, the weight gain and at a certain age, right? Or even the weight gain the weight gain and genetics. And I spoke about this. I don't actually have a podcast on this, so I will do a podcast on this soon. But I do have a YouTube video on it. I think I'll also link it. I'll link it all below, guys, if you guys want to listen to it, watch it, anything. That's where I dive a little bit deeper into that. How basically, like, it's not even genetics that makes our body the way that it is. It is actually belief systems, again, that we are taking on from our parents. So if my mom, for example, okay, this is true. My mom carries weight in her legs, right? I carry weight in my legs. That is not a genetic thing. It is actually her belief system. So her belief system of how she feels stuck in her path, how she doesn't know what path to walk anymore. Somewhere subconsciously she's believing this, and she's beating herself up about the path that she is walking in life and blocking herself from walking the path that she wants to walk, right? Because I feel her energy, I hear her talk about this, I see her struggling with this. At a young age, I adopt that same limiting belief, right? Like, I can't walk my own path. I can't be who I want to be. It's hard to walk the path that I want to walk. All of this stress and all these limiting beliefs, I start making my own, because no fault to my mom, because like I said, we all have our limiting beliefs, and this is all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. And if you start tapping into your intuition and tapping into your body, you start understanding like how this is all part of a plan, because seeing the perfection in all of it, that is how you're going to break through so many things. Anyways, I'm wanting to share way too much with you guys, but basically in that moment, I hear her, I feel her energy, I see her, I'm constantly observing, right? And taking on that energy and taking on that belief. And then, especially with puberty, when you're trying to find like an identity, and you start seeing other girls struggling and this and that, and you're picking up on their belief systems and the beauty standards and all of this. Now that belief system that my mom had, I have made my own. And now it's a belief system that I have. And therefore, I start carrying weight in my legs, right? Because I've internalized her belief system, and now it's also mine. And now I believe that same thing. So of course, there's all methods and ways to deprogram and reprogram the mind. But it takes some time. And actually, if you do it correctly, you can start switching these belief systems in a matter of like days, even minutes, depending on how deep rooted these belief systems are, especially with the techniques that we have at the Goddess Academy as well. Like, you can change and shift so much. It's actually mind blowing. But first, you need to realize that all of this is happening, right? So it takes time, and without the right tools, you don't know that this is happening, and you don't know that you can shift this. So you think that this is just how you are, this is the way you're meant to be, and all of this, and that brings you back to your core self again. You have now internalized this belief that this is who you are, when in actual fact, it is not who you are. You've just now made it who you are, right? And you don't even know that you did it because of all the subliminal belief systems and all of this stuff. So all of these thoughts, these beliefs, and how you think you're meant to be and who you are is not actually who you are at your core self. And the majority, I think 99% of people don't know who they truly are at their core. That takes a lot of mastery, a lot of tools to work through. And when you have the right tools, you can get there really fast. Like in the last, since I've been doing this, basically everything, like so much has shifted, and I still have a ways to go because it's so easy to fall back into the trap of these other belief systems. But when you have the right tools, and that's basically what we do in some of the programs, there are ways to, first of all, clarify whether your thoughts and the thoughts that you're having right now. So, when you have like an anxious, like I've had those like panic attacks, anxious, like flare ups basically, and suddenly everything gets too much. That again could not be your own. You could literally be picking up on someone else's stress and again, internalizing it, making it your own when it is not your own, right? So now I have tools and techniques to verify, is this belief system my own? If not, then how much easier is it to let go because it's not even mine? It's not even my stress that I'm carrying. I'm carrying someone else's stress. Now, there's also techniques to basically, because especially if you're an empathetic person, right, and your aura is all the way out there, and you're reaching out, and if you've done any energy work, a lot of coaches actually tell you to like connect with the aura, but that's not what you want to be doing. You want to keep your aura very close and be intentional when you're connecting to others, because then you keep your energy protected. You should not be taking on anybody else's energy but your own. Keeping your energy clean doesn't mean that you can't help others better. You can actually help others better, way, way better when your energy is not contaminated with other people's thoughts and belief systems. So when you get the techniques to do that, first of all, you see how many thoughts that you're thinking aren't your own. Second of all, your emotions, my emotions have plummeted. I used to be I still am, but I'm so much less emotional in certain situations because I'm mastering these tools and realizing that a lot of these emotions aren't even my own, that a lot of what's happening is actually to serve me, not to work against me. You start realizing how much you're creating around yourself, and at the same time, how much what you're hearing, what you're believing from the outside world is not even your own. And with these tools, you can block out other people's emotions, you can block out other people's thoughts, you can make sure that your energy is clear of anybody else's energy, basically. Because it's so easy to connect to others, but at the same time, then you are exchanging energies, and you want to make sure that your energy is clear of other people's energies, and that makes your life so much more peaceful, right? It's the same, like that's some of the things that we talk about in the programs as well. If you listen to Unveiling the Shadow Side of the beauty industry and the fitness industry, and also my podcast with Angela, there we dive into all of that stuff as well. How also like previous relationships, things that you've been in, these relationships can cause you to connect with someone on such a deep level. And when you have the right tools to disconnect, you can literally, it's like a load, like a weight off of your shoulders. And when you can manage to fully like reconnect to who you are and gather all your, basically your energy that you've been handing out to other people, because that's what you're doing when you're connecting with other people, when you're exchanging energy with other people, you're basically handing out pieces of yourself to other people. And you don't know that you're doing that because you're just being an empathetic person, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's so much easier for you to heal, to reconnect with who you are and realize who your core self is when you have all of those pieces back, when you're not connected to other people's energies, when you can make sure that you are you as a whole, basically. And then with all those tools, you can start peeling back basically the layers and removing those layers of that subconscious programming and all that programming and those belief systems and the conscious collective getting to you. And one of like the biggest parts for me where I realized this and I was like, I don't want, like COVID was massive. COVID was such a massive like game changer for me. And I think for a lot of us, it was a big realization of having to choose to stand your ground in certain areas. And that was a big soul lesson for all of us to realize that, here it's like other people were very much more intentionally trying to push their belief systems on us, all with the best intentions, everybody with the best intentions. But in that moment, it was so difficult. That's the best representation of like an intense situation of where everything that you believe, you start to question, or you start to like feel like, hey, is this my opinion? Is this someone else's opinion? I had that at least around that time. I don't know who else did, but that was a big test for us. And that is basically on a subconscious level, without you knowing it, that is what's happening. So basically you are picking up constantly, all these energies are floating around, all these belief systems are floating around, and they're coming into your field, and you're picking up on them, and you're internalizing them. And I'm sure we all know that, right? With like a friend that you hang out with, and they start talking about something, and the longer they talk about it, and the more you start seeing, unless you really disagree, but the more you start like thinking, oh yeah, maybe that's right. Oh yeah. And you start making that belief system your own when it isn't even your own. And so that on a small scale, then look at it at a grander scale, is what's been happening throughout your entire life. Because that is what it is. We don't know, we haven't gotten the tools from a young age to be able to disconnect from other people's beliefs and thoughts and all of this stuff. Actually, we've become we're very vulnerable at those young ages. Between 9 and 11 is where it kind of starts. And then after that, you go through all these phases, right, where you're trying to figure out who your identity is. And then you kind of land on something. But then still, when we think we're then at our core self, we are still not. Because as you can see over those years, you've just taken bits and bobs from everything. And what you think you like, you have created a mold of who you are today. So I promise you, when you start chipping away other people's belief systems, other people's ideas, all this subconscious programming, all of this energy floating around that you're making your own. And when you chip away at all those limiting beliefs that you've internalized and made your own, and you start clearing out all that junk, and you start learning and connecting to the core of who you are, and you start learning how to do that, and really feeling out what it is, and connecting to your body, connecting to your gifts, connecting to the universe, and being able to fully embody who you are, life doesn't only become way more fun, but also so many things start opening up for you. And it is just the best thing that you can ever do. It is just the best thing that you can ever do. And I promise you that you will never regret doing anything like that, even though it can sometimes feel scary because we're so used to what we do on a daily basis. Even me, like I fall into the trap of like needing to do this and this and this because that is what society's told me to do. And then I realize, wait a second, this is not mine. Like that's the thing with, for example, I spoke about that also on the other podcast, like me worrying about having children yet. I know I'm not ready yet. I know I want them, but it's like this stress and this pressure from the outside world and nobody's even communicating to me. I'm just feeling that energy from around me, right? And that is not my own. That is the conscious collective. That is belief systems around me that are making me question whether I should be moving faster or not. And you're not. You are exactly where you're meant to be right now. And when you trust that you are exactly where you're meant to be right now, and when you start applying these tools, and if you've stumbled upon this specific podcast, you start realizing that, that that so much of what you're doing, of what you're believing, all of this is some junk that you need to clear out. And then you can start truly, truly connecting to who you truly are. And that's when life gets really, really good. Doesn't mean that it's always easy to do with all these thoughts flying around, but with the right tools, you start instantaneously seeing shifts in your reality. And that's how crazy it is, because when you start witnessing these shifts, you start realizing that you basically have the authority to create any life that you desire when you connect back to your true self and when you start directing your path to the path that you're meant to be walking. And to figure out how to do all of that, we've got some great free resources. So I'm expanding on the new free membership. We are now doing the series on intuition. I will be uploading more of those series next week and this week. And the free Q&As, which I host every other Tuesday. So the next one is next week. Come join us. Listen to this. Ask your questions there. Email me at info@nukesgoddessacademy.com if you want to expand more or take it to the next advanced levels, or want to find out more about these tools and everything and figure all of that out and take it to the next step. Just reach out and we'll see where to go from here and what the best next steps are for you. But for now, check out the free membership and keep listening to this podcast. That was it for today. A lot of things to think about, a lot of life-changing information. I would say listen to it again, take it in, start thinking about it and seeing how this could be the case, and maybe start intending to connect to your core self already, and start asking yourself when you're starting to think something, or when you have like an anxious moment and you're worrying about something, start asking yourself, is this something that I believe or is this someone else's? And you'll already start seeing shifts in your life. Thank you so much for listening to another podcast. I can't wait to see where we're going next week, because I'm just going to feel out a little bit what the topic is for next week. But for now, enjoy this. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode, and go hang out with me inside the free membership. And hopefully I'll see you in the next Q&A. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to You Can Call Me Goddess. I am so happy that you joined us in this show today. If you feel like this podcast gave you any sort of life change or value, then share it with someone you think would also get a lot of value out of it, because maybe it could just be that one thing that changes that person's life. If you enjoyed the show, please give it a nice rating below or in the show, because we would love to expand more on topics that you enjoy and keep this podcast up and running. Anyways, thank you, beautiful, and I hope to see you in the next podcast.